All right, for this week, we're going to learn about economic systems. So this week, we're just going to focus on the basic vocabulary on economic systems, and then next week, we're going to look specifically at countries within Europe with these types of economic systems. To start off, we have three types of economic systems. We have traditional, we have command, and command would be something that we would have referred to as communism in the past. And then we have market, and we would have referred to market as capitalism before. You do need to know those words as well that are in parentheses. But we'll hear it mostly referred to as a command or market economy today. So to start off, again, if you look at this first part, because not every country has everything that its people need or want, they have to kind of basically figure out how they're going to get those items. How they get those items will be determined by what type of economic system they have. Now, in order to do that, we have to look at these three basic economic questions. You will need to know these questions and how each economic system will answer them, and we're going to go over that today in the video. So first, we want to answer what goods and services will be produced, so when we determine what we're making. Two, how the goods will be produced, so how those goods are being made, and how we answer that will determine what economic system we have. And then three, who will consume the goods and services will then also help us determine, is it a traditional command or market economy? Okay, so we're going to start first with the traditional economy. Now, I will start off by saying, if you look at the bottom, there are no examples in Europe. So because there are no examples in Europe, we don't have an economic or a country to compare this economic system with. But you do need to know what the traditional economic system is made up of. So we're going to go over that, but just know there are no examples in Europe. Traditional is exactly the way it sounds. If you think of something that's based off tradition or based off the past, that is the best way to describe a traditional economy. So it's the customs and habits of the past that are used to decide what goods and services will be produced, distributed, and consumed. Now, the reason you're not going to have a traditional economy in a modern society is because there's no stores. There's nowhere to go and buy the items you need. In a traditional economy, you do everything through bartering or through trading. So I may have a farm with cows, and the person next to me may have wheat. And in order to get what we need, we're going to exchange or we're going to barter so that we can get those goods. So this is why it's not going to work in a modern society. You may go to your neighbor's house and borrow something if you don't have it. But if you don't have something, you know you can go to a Target or a Publix or a Walmart to buy the goods. Traditional economies, that's not the case. Traditional is going to be more with tribal communities, and we'll talk about it more so in Latin America. There's an Indian tribe, the Yanomamo Indians of Brazil, that would be an example of this. Or if you're familiar with Australia, they have the Aborigines, which is a native group to them. They're an example of this, but in Europe, there are no examples of a traditional economy. Now, members of the society know early in life what his or her role will be. And what I mean by that is that members of the community, so who's ever in this traditional economy, know what job they're going to have. So if my family is responsible for farming, then everything that is being done in a farm, my family is responsible to providing that for the community. If my neighbors are responsible for hunting and gathering, then that would be another example of, things that they need to produce to give to their community. Cattle herding is another one that's common. So again, like I said, we have farmers in the United States, but it's not farmers like this. We have farmers that are making producing goods that are selling them to stores so that we can go purchase them there. That's not the case. Remember that in a traditional economy, it's based off customs and habits of the past, and people are going to get their items through trading or bartering. So again, no examples in Europe. Now, a command economy, if you look here, just like the word communism, and you should be familiar with the word communism, Command economy is when the government decides everything that will be produced. So there are government planning groups that are going to make the basic economic decisions. So again, going back to these three economic questions, what goods and services will be produced? The government will decide what's being produced. How will they be produced? The government will decide how they're produced. Who's going to consume them? Well, the people are going to consume them, but the government's going to let you know how much of those that you're going to be able to have so that you're able to use. So government is the key word here for a command economy. Now, the government, again, like we said, they're going to determine such things as goods and services, the prices of the items, and wage rates. So, for example, if you are working in a factory, the government might give you what's called a quota, which you see down here. A quota is a specific amount of goods you must produce. Okay, so for example, if you're working in a factory and you're making cars, they might say within a week's time you are responsible for making this part of the car, and you need to make 500 of them. That is your quota. Your wage rate will be what you are getting paid. So you have to meet your quota in order to get paid whatever amount they set to it. Now, this can be good or bad depending on the way that you look at it. If the government is determining, or these government planning groups determining what you need, it's good because they're going to focus on keeping the prices lower, because in a command economy, you focus on needs, not wants. So that is a plus to a country that leans towards command. The negative side is that if the government is deciding how much to produce, you could have shortages. They might not make enough, and if they don't make enough, then you're going to go without. I always give the example in my class of when I go to the grocery store. I'm responsible for buying all of the groceries every Sunday, what we need for the week. Well, I have to plan out how much my family is going to eat, what items we're going to need. I got to think of lunches. I got to think of dinners. I got to think of things that I'm short on that I got to have, whether it be paper towels or soap or whatever that may be. And not just me and my family that I'm trying to plan for. I normally have to go back to the store sometime in the middle of the week because I forgot something or I didn't plan for enough. So this is where it's the bad side. If you think about how difficult it is to plan to go grocery shopping for your own family when it's a few people, imagine trying to do this for a whole country. So shortages are bound to happen. Now, our examples of a command economy. Well, the former Soviet Union would be the best example of a command economy. So we're not necessarily saying Russia, and we're going to talk about that in a minute when we look at our continuum, but the former Soviet Union was considered a communist country. They were more like a command economy. Okay, so we have more countries that are going to lean more towards this market, which we're going to look at next. Okay, so moving on to a market economy. Now, this would be something that we would compare like the United States with. We are a country that leans closer to a market economy. We value the idea of capitalism, which we're going to go through now. Now, with the market economy, again, looking at these three economic questions, the what, how, and who, we are going to use supply and demand to help us decide what items we need. And part of one of your tasks is to watch the supply and demand brain pop to get some background information. But just to review down here, the law of supply and demand will determine really what we're going to use, but also how much we're going to charge for those items. Again, to review supply and demand. If you think about supply, the items you have on hand, demand is how many people want it. Okay, in a capitalist economy or a market economy, stores are going to have items that people want to buy. Okay, we also have our needs, but whereas in a command economy, it focuses more on needs, a market economy focuses on wants. And think again, our wants are those high technology items like, iPads and iPhones and PlayStations and whatever else they have now. Your iPhones and why we have a new iPhone every year. That is determined because that's what people want, and people are willing to pay the price to get those items. So prices tend to be higher in a market economy. However, we do encourage competition so that prices can at least not be so high But again, that kind of goes into monopoly, which we're not getting too much into now, where one company is focusing on producing all of those goods. So the law of supply and demand, if you have a lot of items, you have a high supply but a low demand, remember your price is going to go down because people don't want it and you have a lot of it. You want to get rid of it. I always say kind of think of like the items that go on clearance at Target, that you may have a lot of them, but if people aren't wanting them, especially if it's like holiday themed and the holiday's over, the price will go down because the stores want to get rid of them so that they're not stuck on their shelf and nobody's buying it. They want to get items that people are going to buy and put those on the shelf. Now, in the other case, if you have a low supply, so you don't have many items, but a high demand, your price is going to go up because you know you could charge more for an item because if people really want it, they'll pay for it. And the latest iPhone is always an example of this. You know, Apple is very smart about this. They don't produce as much of the item as that people want because they want to create that demand. They want to be able to charge, you know, $500-$600 for an iPhone because people will be willing to pay for it. Then after that iPhone gets old and they come out with a new one, they lower the price of the older iPhones because there's not a demand for it anymore. You know, there's enough of the supply that people want to buy them. Or those that want to wait for it to pay a reasonable price for them, which would be me, will wait for the price to go down. But there will be people that will pay top dollar for that iPhone just to have it as soon as it comes out. And again, that goes under the law of supply and demand. That falls under a market economy. Now, decisions are guided by changes in prices that occur between buyers and sellers. This again goes by sellers would be people that are selling the items, you know, the stores, or even those that are making the items, and buyers would be like me and you, the consumers. So this is what we want to buy determines what's being made, and sellers are making what people want to buy because they're not going to make stuff that people don't want to buy. So again, other names like free enterprise, capitalism, laissez-faire, these are all examples of a market economy. You only need to know capitalism and actually market for these two. And just know you're going to focus more on the market economy, but capitalism is just another name for that. Now, individuals or corporations generally own your businesses or farms. So the contrast to this in a command economy, the government owns businesses and farms, and they tell you what to make, how much, again, what you're going to pay, who you're going to hire. In this case, in a market economy, if you own your own business, you decide who you're going to hire. You're going to decide how much you're going to pay them. So another example for this, if you think about, is the word entrepreneurs, which we're going to learn more about next week. Entrepreneurs are people willing to risk their own money to start a business. They have a great idea. They want to start a business. You might even have, your mom or dad might have their own business. They might be considered an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are very encouraged in a market economy because we want people to start their own businesses. So that's where you would find an entrepreneur. Now, some examples as we just went through will be the United Kingdom. Okay, so the United Kingdom, the U.S. would be an example of this as well. Countries that are going to be more of a market economy. Now, as I mentioned, these three, traditional, command, and market, are all examples of economic systems. However, we don't say that there are countries that are purely market or purely command, so 100% market or 100% command. We already know traditional doesn't exist in Europe. We won't talk about that until next semester when we cover Latin America. So the new term that we're going to look at, if you scroll down to your notes, will be a mixed economy. And mix is exactly what it sounds like. It is a combination or a mix of command and market economies. And this is truly what every country, at least every modern country, is an example of. So when we say a mixed economy, we're saying that every country is considered mixed. Well, then why do we have command and market? Well, we say every country is either mixed and they lean closer to a command economy or they lean closer to a market economy. And if you look here, there are no pure command or market economies. All that means is there are no countries that are 100% command or 100% market. Even if you look at the most extreme, like North Korea. North Korea, very close to being a pure command economy, but they're like a percentage short from being 100% of a command economy. So we would say they are mixed and they lean really, really close to the command side of it. Now, all modern economies of today, as we said, have both command and market economies, and they are known as mixed. What that means is if they're mixed, that people are free to open and run their own businesses, but they are protected by rules and laws. So this is what most countries are. You need government regulation, you need laws and rules in place. So for example, you want to have safe goods that you're buying, you want to have good practices in place if you're a worker. You don't want to only get paid $1 an hour when you should be making, $9 an hour. So you want laws in place to protect the worker. But then you also want the freedom to have a business and to make decisions about your own business. So this is why we would say all countries are considered mixed. Now, this is the mixed continuum. On this mixed continuum, we have countries placed here. Now I'm going to go over the mixed continuum, but in another video that I'm going to attach to this, I'm going to go over how you find this information so that you know what to, I just didn't come up with these random numbers. But there's a website that is heritage.org, and they have country rankings. And this determines where a country is with their economic freedom, not their government freedom. So not like their leaders and, if they're an autocracy or democracy or things like that. This just refers to the economy. So on the continuum, which is just this line bar here, you have command that's always on the left, and you have market that's always on the right, and you'll need to know that where they're placed. You will need to know these countries, not their scores, but where a country is placed on the continuum and whether they are mixed leaning towards market or mixed leaning towards command. So I always say remember by the alphabetical order. So C, command comes first, then M because that's farther in the alphabet. So command to the left, market to the right. So command economies again, meaning these two countries here are mixed that lean towards command economies. And these countries here are mixed and they lean more towards market economies. So let's look at our command economies first. Now, both of these are Latin American countries, so you don't need to necessarily know as much about them now, but we do want you to see some examples of a command economy and where you would place it. I will tell you for your test, you will need to know Cuba, and that Cuba is a mixed economy that leans towards command. So Cuba and Venezuela, like North Korea, would be another one. They are all placed on this side because Cuba and Venezuela are mixed economies, but they have a lot more government involvement than countries that are over here on the right. So Cuba, out of 200 countries, is ranked 178. Venezuela is 179, and like I already mentioned, North Korea would have been 200. This is showing you the ranking. So this is showing you how much of a command economy or characteristics of a command economy they have. The number below it is their percentage, and it's ranked by countries that have either, they're considered free, mostly free, moderately free, then moderately unfree, and then repressed, meaning that would be Cuba and Venezuela. They're considered repressed countries. Now, on the market side, and for the test, you will need to know Germany and UK. Both are countries that lean towards the market side. The same is going to hold true, though. If you look at the rankings, we have the UK is ranked 7. So the lower the number, the more freedom they have in a market economy. We have the US, which is ranked 17. That means they have more characteristics of market than Germany, but not as much as UK. We have Germany that's ranked 27, so they're not as free in a market economy like the US, but more than Russia. Now, Russia I want to talk about, and the reason we're not going to ask you this on your test is Russia just changed. Russia used to be 59 as their score, and now they're 61. Now, to be considered a country that leans towards markets, you have to have a score of 60. So if you look, even though Russia is right on the line of leaning towards a market economy, it's just barely. It just moved right over to lean towards a market economy. So although it's mixed that leans towards markets, they really don't have a ton more of market characteristics compared to command. It's just like a little bit more. So we're not going to ask you on the test because it's so closely related to it, but you do need to just be aware that Russia, where it is at on the continuum. So again, just to recap, you have three economic questions that you need to know. What goods and services will be produced? How will goods and services be produced? Who will consume those goods and services? And how you answer those questions will determine if you're a traditional, a command, or a market economy. And remember that all countries, all modern countries, are going to be considered mixed, but they lean towards command or they lean towards market. How we know that is how they're placed on the continuum. And again, the numbers in parentheses are their rankings. So all of these countries are leaning towards markets. All of these countries are mixed, leaning towards command. And these percentages let us know why we put them there. So again, on another video, I'm just going to explain going through the website of how we found that information. But again, you do want to know this continuum, specifically UK, Germany, and Cuba for your test.